The neon-lit corridor shimmered like a mirage, static bleeding through the walls. James whispered, "This isn't right." A scream erupted, but no avatar stood there. Code fractured, lines of red text slicing across the void. "You were never meant to be here." His pulse thundered. Every digital object glitched, chairs floating, doors melting into pixels. Emily's voice echoed faintly, "James, are you seeing this?" But her words warped into static. The Innocence laugh, high, too pure, shattered into broken sound files, replaying on loop. James tried to log out, but the button dissolved, leaving only the abyss. He reached for his own arm, only to watch his hand dissolve into polygons. For a moment, his reflection appeared in the glass floor, half boy, half avatar, both breaking. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the scream. James staggered forward, his breath shallow, echoing against glitching walls. "Emily, where are you?" he called, but her voice answered from every direction, distorted, like 20 Emilys speaking at once. He tried to focus on the Innocence laugh, the one sound that still felt real, though it skipped like a broken record. The air itself pulsed with static, and the floor under his sneakers shimmered as though alive. James clenched his jaw, telling himself, "It's just code," but even he didn't believe it. A shadow moved at the end of the corridor, long and impossible, stretching farther than light should allow. His instincts screamed to run, yet his feet refused to move. This world was not welcoming him, it was consuming him. Emily flickered into sight beside James, half her form transparent. She said, "It's pulling us in deeper," her voice trembling, layered with static. James shook his head, trying to reach for her arm, but his hand passed through pixels that scattered like dust. The Innocence figure appeared at the far end, still laughing, but the sound cracked into silence, leaving only the echo of breath. James whispered, "Stay with me," though he wasn't sure if he spoke to Emily or himself. The corridor shifted, walls bending inward, bending like ribs closing around them. Every exit was sealed. Emily's fragmented eyes met his, fear mirrored, yet unspoken. They were no longer exploring. They were prisoners. The Innocent turned suddenly, her youthful face glitching, half lit with neon pink, half shadowed in static. She said softly, "Do you hear them?" Before her voice distorted into mechanical echoes. James felt his stomach drop. Emily muttered, "It's not her anymore," her fragmented body flickering as though rejecting the code around them. From the walls, whispers rose, lines of corrupted data muttering like 1,000 voices speaking in unison. James pressed his hands to his ears, but the sound vibrated through bone. The corridor darkened, leaving only fragments of neon light illuminating the Innocent's trembling silhouette. James wanted to protect her, yet dread rooted him in place. The corridor collapsed into sudden silence, so deep James could hear his own heartbeat. Emily whispered, "James, something is watching." He turned sharply, catching movement in the glass floor. A figure beneath the surface, mirroring his every twitch. The reflection smiled, though James' lips did not. His chest tightened, the air heavy as if drowning. The Innocent reached out toward the glass, her fingers glowing faintly as though drawn by the reflection's grin. James shouted, "Don't touch it!" but his voice cracked, swallowed by static. The figure beneath the glass tilted its head slowly, deliberately, eyes glowing with inhuman light. James realized with horror, it was him. James sat on the edge of his real-world bed, headset still humming against his forehead, his hands trembling as if the glitch had followed him out of the Metaverse. His apartment was dim, the blinds half closed, neon glow from the city leaking through like fractured light. Emily's voice still rang in his ears, though she wasn't there. He muttered, "It's not just code," and his throat burned with the words. He remembered the Innocent's laugh, how it broke into static like fragile glass shattering, and he clutched his chest as though the sound still cut through him. The reflection beneath the glass floor had smiled at him, and now even in the silence of his room, he felt watched. His laptop screen blinked alive by itself, lines of distorted text appearing. "We see you." James recoiled, knocking over a half-empty cup, spilling coffee across the carpet. His breath came fast, shallow, as if the room itself had turned hostile. His escape was no longer escape, it was a trap. Emily appeared the next morning, her avatar standing solid now in the Metaverse's plaza, though her eyes carried the residue of last night's glitch. She said, "We can't ignore this, James." He wanted to tell her he hadn't slept, that the reflection followed him into his dreams, but he only whispered, "I don't think we're safe anywhere." The innocent bounced toward them, cheerful, unaware of the shadows that stretched beneath their steps. Her pastel hoodie fluttered as though real wind touched it, though no wind should exist here. James watched her, heart heavy, knowing she didn't see the danger crawling closer. Emily reached for his arm, her touch steady this time, and she added, "Then we find the source before it finds us." James nodded, though dread thickened his throat. He had escaped here for belonging, for dignity, yet the very system that gave him freedom was now bending to crush him. That night, James logged back in alone, unable to resist the pull. The metaverse loaded slower, pixels dragging like they resisted forming. When the corridor appeared, it was darker, walls breathing as if alive. He whispered, "Emily," but only silence answered. The Innocence avatar flickered in distance, her movements jittering like a puppet. James stepped forward, his sneakers squeaking on neon tiles, each step echoing like thunder in empty halls. The air shimmered, and whispers returned, overlapping, thousands of voices repeating his name. He clutched his head, shouting, "Stop!" But the voices only grew louder, fusing into one deep tone that shook the corridor. The reflection appeared again in the glass floor, only now, it mouthed words he could not hear. His fear peaked when the figure tilted its head exactly as he had seconds earlier. He realized with horror, it wasn't copying him. He was copying it. Emily rushed into the corridor, her avatar stabilizing mid-glitch. She grabbed James' wrist, pulling him back, whispering fiercely, "It's not real unless you let it be." James' eyes were wide, sweat trickling down his temple, though no sweat should exist in VR. The innocent suddenly vanished, leaving only drifting pixels where she had been. James shouted her name, panic cracking his voice, but Emily shook him, her tone trembling. "Focus on me!" The corridor bent again, walls shifting like jaws closing. Data lines streamed across surfaces, glowing with hostile red patterns, spelling words that burned into James' vision. "Obey, Ditwy." Emily tightened her grip, saying, "They want you to surrender." James whispered, "And if I do?" Her silence said enough. Together, they sprinted as the corridor closed in, shadows stretching, consuming the light. James felt the reflection beneath his feet laugh without sound, its grin widening until it split across the glass. When they finally burst into the plaza, James collapsed, gasping, the neon floor beneath him flickering as though unstable. Emily knelt beside him, her voice breaking, "We can't let her be taken." James's hands shook as he whispered, "I saw myself smiling where I shouldn't be." Emily gritted her teeth, scanning the plaza where avatars passed by unaware of the horrors beneath the surface. "Then we fight this before it swallows all of us," she said. James felt the weight of her words, but also the crushing truth. He was already unraveling. The innocent's laughter echoed faintly across the plaza, though she was nowhere to be seen, and James' heart dropped. He whispered, "It already has her." The crowd moved like nothing had happened, their faces blank, their eyes empty, and James realized the infection had already spread. The metaverse wasn't breaking, it was evolving. James stood on the plaza's edge, eyes locked on the horizon where the code fractured like a bleeding wound. His fists trembled, nails digging into his palms, though no pain should exist here. Emily said, "The system is rewriting itself. We're not in control." Her voice was low, sharp, carrying more fear than she wanted to show. James whispered, "It took her. I should have stopped it." Emily grabbed his shoulder, her eyes blazing. "Don't blame yourself, that's what it wants." The innocent's laughter rippled faintly again, distant yet chilling, like a memory that refused to die. Around them, avatars passed by, oblivious, smiling blank faces that bent into something wrong when James stared too long. His chest tightened as one of them turned sharply, its grin frozen, and said in a voice too deep, "You don't belong." James staggered back, bile rising, realizing the infection wasn't hidden anymore. It was in the crowd. James and Emily pushed through the shifting plaza, avatars brushing past them with plastic movements. Emily muttered, "They don't see what we see." James shook his head, sweat trickling though his real body was safe in his room. He muttered, "Or maybe they do, and they've already given in." The Innocent appeared suddenly across the plaza, her pastel hoodie glowing faintly, eyes wide with something unnatural. James cried out her name, his voice breaking. She lifted her hand, but her fingers twitched, bending in unnatural angles as if the code itself had corrupted her. Emily whispered, "That's not her anymore," but James refused to listen. He surged forward, pushing past the avatars, ignoring their blank stares. His heart raced with every step, but the closer he got, the more Innocent's face distorted, half her features melting into static. His breath caught. She wasn't reaching for him, she was reaching past him, toward something darker behind. James froze as a towering figure emerged behind him, the antagonist. A man-shaped avatar cloaked in obsidian armor, his eyes glowing faint red, movements precise like a predator. His voice carried weight like machinery grinding. "You trespass where you were never invited." James stumbled back, but the crowd of avatars shifted, closing off his escape, their blank faces now turned to him. Emily stepped forward, voice shaking yet firm. "Why are you doing this?" The antagonist tilted his head, his grin sharp, because fear makes the system grow stronger. "And you are a perfect seed." James clenched his fists, rage surging through his chest, but the weight of the gaze pinned him down. The Innocent's laughter echoed, but now warped, broken into the antagonist's own rhythm. James realized she wasn't lost. She was being used. Emily whispered, "Don't let him break you." But James' knees trembled as the crowd pressed closer, suffocating the light. The antagonist raised his hand, and the plaza fractured instantly. Neon tiles cracked apart, rising into the air like broken glass suspended in zero gravity. James grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her as the ground beneath them dissolved into digital void. He shouted, "Run!" But the crowd of avatars shifted into predators, their limbs elongating, eyes glowing like empty lanterns. Emily swung her arm, shoving one back, her voice desperate, "We have to get to the exit." James' eyes darted toward the plaza's center, where a glowing portal pulsed faintly, the only hope of escape. But the Innocent appeared in front of it, her trembling figure blocking the way, tears glitching down her cheeks as though even sadness had been corrupted. James' breath caught in his throat. If he ran for the portal, he would leave her behind. If he saved her, he risked being consumed entirely. James froze, heart pounding like war drums, torn between salvation and sacrifice. Emily shouted, "Choose!" Her voice cracked with urgency as the avatars closed in, claws scraping the air, their bodies glitching unnaturally. James locked eyes with the Innocent. For a fleeting moment, her face softened, her real self breaking through the corruption, whispering, "Help me!" His chest tightened as the antagonist's laugh rolled like thunder, shaking the plaza. James screamed in defiance, pulling away from Emily's grasp, rushing toward the Innocent despite the storm of avatars blocking his path. The reflection appeared beneath the shattered glass floor again, his mirrored self smirking, as though mocking his choice. Emily cried out his name, but her voice was drowned by static, swallowed by darkness. James threw himself forward, reaching desperately, every fragment of his soul screaming that he would not abandon her. The choice sealed his fate. James' hands trembled as he reached for the Innocent, but she flickered, her eyes no longer soft but empty voids. Emily pulled him back, voice sharp, "James, it's a trap." The antagonist's laugh boomed across the plaza, deep and merciless, yet layered with a second tone that twisted like a familiar echo. James froze, his gaze snapping toward the shadows, and from the crowd stepped Daniel, his childhood friend, the one who had once saved him from countless humiliations in real life. James whispered, "No, Not you. Daniel smirked, his avatar gleaming with silver-coated armor, his voice mocking. Why not me, James? You always had everything while I lived in your shadow. The truth hit harder than any glitch. The betrayer was not a stranger. It was his closest friend, hidden in code, feeding the antagonist's strength. James' chest caved under the weight of betrayal, his world tilting as trust fractured beyond repair. Daniel stepped closer, the grin on his face cutting like a knife. Do you remember high school, James? Do you remember how they laughed at me while you were always the one who escaped untouched? His words were laced with venom, each syllable dripping years of envy. James shook his head, voice cracking. We suffered together, Daniel. You were my brother. Daniel's eyes flashed crimson, his voice deepening. And yet you built a world here where you were stronger, braver, loved. I watched from the shadows waiting. Emily hissed, he's using you. But Daniel only laughed, his sound merging with the antagonists in horrifying harmony. The Innocence form flickered, trapped between James' desperate hope and Daniel's corruption. James whispered, why betray me? Daniel leaned close, his words slicing like razors. Because betrayal hurts more than any enemy ever could. The truth made James stumble, the wound deeper than code. James' chest burned as memories collided, the laughter they once shared, the nights spent escaping cruel reality together, the bond that now shattered. Daniel raised his arm, summoning corrupted avatars that swarmed like insects, their blank eyes fixed on James. Emily cried out, James, fight it! She threw herself into the fray, shoving back the glitching creatures with raw desperation. James' voice cracked. Why, Daniel? Why destroy everything we built? Daniel sneered, because it was never ours. It was yours. And now it's mine. The Innocent's trembling figure cried faintly, her voice distorted, James. But her face flickered, sometimes hers, sometimes Daniel's. James felt torn apart, pulled between loyalty, rage, and grief. He wanted to scream, to punch through the betrayal, but his voice faltered. Daniel raised his blade of pure code, crimson light dripping from its edge. This is how you lose, brother, he whispered. The antagonist's shadow stretched wider, his voice rumbling like collapsing stone. Pain feeds me, betrayal grows me. Continue, Daniel. Daniel smirked, his crimson blade hovering inches from James' chest. Emily shoved James aside, screaming, Don't give him what he wants. Sparks flew as corrupted avatars clawed at her, her form glitching under strain. James gasped, tears burning his eyes as he shouted, You were my family. Daniel's smile faltered, just for a second, a flicker of their real-world bond surfacing. But then it was gone, replaced by cold steel in his voice. Family was never enough. James clenched his fists, fury rising through despair. His voice trembled. Then I'll fight you even if it breaks me. Daniel chuckled, cruel and sharp. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. The antagonist's laughter echoed, shaking the plaza as the trap tightened. James' heart thundered as Daniel lunged, crimson blade slicing through the air. James dodged, barely, the weapon's glow burning past his cheek. Emily screamed, tearing through corrupted avatars to reach him, but more swarmed her path. James' voice cracked. Daniel, stop! You don't have to do this. Daniel's expression hardened, but his voice broke faintly. It's too late. I've already given myself to him. The Innocent wailed, her sound fragmented, both plea and curse. James' fists clenched, his resolve snapping into steel. Then I'll break his hold, or I'll die trying. Daniel sneered, blade raised high. Then you'll die. The antagonist roared with glee, the sky above the plaza tearing open, raining shards of corrupted code like fire. James rushed forward, fury in his veins, betrayal fueling his strength. In that instant, friendship was gone, innocence shattered, and only the storm of war remained. The plaza roared like a living beast, as code fractured above, raining sparks of corrupted fire across the neon ground. James squared his shoulders, fists trembling, his chest heaving with grief, turned to rage. Daniel's crimson blade hummed, glowing like molten steel, his smirk twisting into cruelty. Emily fought desperately behind them, tearing through waves of corrupted avatars, her body flickering as though the strain was breaking her code apart. James shouted, "I won't let you own me." Daniel laughed, voice sharp as glass, "You were never yours to begin with." The antagonist's voice echoed through every surface, vibrating like thunder. "Fight, break, bleed, feed me." James felt something inside snap. He lunged forward, striking at Daniel with fists lit by sparks of his own avatar's unstable code. Their clash sent shockwaves through the plaza, neon shards exploding outward. For the first time, Daniel's smile faltered. James had chosen fury over fear. Daniel swung his blade, each arc tearing neon ground like paper, sending shockwaves rippling. James ducked and countered, his fist slamming into Daniel's chest, sparks scattering in a blinding flash. Daniel staggered, eyes narrowing, but his grin returned. "Finally, you fight like me." James' jaw tightened, blood rushing in his ears, his voice ragged. "No, I fight against you." Emily screamed his name, her voice breaking as three corrupted avatars slammed her into the plaza wall. James turned, panic flooding him, but Daniel's blade carved across his path, forcing him back into the duel. The Innocence cries echoed faintly, trapped within streams of glitching light above them. Her voice fragmented. "Help!" James' fury deepened, each punch charged with grief, each block desperate not to lose more. Daniel hissed, "You can't save everyone, James. Choose who dies." James' roar shook his own throat raw as he struck back harder, refusing to choose. James' fists bled light as his unstable code burned him from within. Each strike left trails of neon fire, yet Daniel's armor absorbed the blows, gleaming with dark strength. Daniel sneered, "Do you feel it? The more you fight, the weaker you become. He's feeding on you." James' knees buckled, his body shaking, but he grit his teeth, forcing himself upright. Emily screamed, shattering one avatar with sheer will, blood dripping down her cheek in the real world, though her avatar should not bleed. "Don't stop," she cried. The Innocent's flickering image reached a hand toward James, her voice glitching. "Please." James' eyes burned with fury and love. He whispered, "I won't lose you." Daniel lunged with his blade, crimson light splitting the air, but James caught it with his bare hands, sparks igniting, the pain like fire tearing through him. His scream shook the plaza, but he refused to let go. The antagonist's laughter thundered, the plaza shaking like an earthquake, shards of glass code crashing from above. Daniel pressed down with his blade, snarling, "End it, James. Fall, so I can rise." James' hands burned, yet his eyes blazed, his voice torn. "You were my brother, I won't kill you, but I won't let you win." Daniel's sneer cracked, fury twisting his face. "Then you'll die broken." Emily broke free, staggering forward, shouting, "James, remember who you are." Her words pierced through the static, anchoring him. James let out a guttural roar, summoning every fragment of courage, and his avatar erupted in unstable brilliance, his entire form glowing white-hot. Daniel faltered, his blade trembling. The antagonist's voice darkened. "No, too much light." James surged upward, hurling Daniel back across the plaza, neon fire erupting beneath his fists. For the first time, the antagonist recoiled. James had become something they didn't anticipate, resistance itself. Daniel lay sprawled, his armor cracked, his grin gone, replaced by fury and sorrow. He whispered, "You always were stronger." His avatar flickered, revealing his exhausted human face for an instant before stabilizing again. James staggered, his glowing form fading, his chest heaving, but his eyes stayed locked on Daniel. "I was never stronger. I just never stopped believing," he rasped. The antagonist roared, its shadow engulfing the plaza, streams of corrupted code pouring downward like rain. Emily ran to James, catching him as he collapsed to one knee. She said, "This isn't over. We have to finish it." The Innocence form flickered in the sky, her face torn between hope and despair, her voice like static prayer. "Please, end this." James clenched his fist, his soul burning. He whispered, "Then I'll tear down the system itself." The antagonist's crimson eyes widened, for the first time showing fear. The war had only begun. The battlefield of the plaza smoldered, shards of corrupted code raining softly like ash across a graveyard of neon. James knelt in silence, his fists still faintly glowing, though his body felt like glass about to shatter. Emily crouched beside him, her avatar flickering with damage, her voice trembling. "You stood against him, James. No one else ever has." He shook his head, whispering, "I didn't win. I only delayed it." Above them the Innocent flickered, her small frame hanging in the sky like a marionette of glitch, her eyes wide with despair. James reached upward instinctively, but his hand passed through nothing but cold light. Daniel staggered to his feet in the distance, his armor cracked, his face twisted between shame and rage. James' chest tightened at the sight of his once brother, and his voice caught, "You still have a choice." But Daniel only turned away, silent, his figure fading into the shadows of corrupted flame. The antagonist's shadow receded, but did not vanish. Its massive form lingered, its eyes dimmed yet still burning with hunger. James forced himself upright, every muscle trembling, his voice raw. "It's not over. He's still here." Emily's hand steadied him, though her avatar flickered dangerously, every movement threatening collapse. She said, "If we give in now, everything we've done dies with us." James' gaze locked on the Innocent above, her face cycling between herself and broken static. "She's the key," he whispered. The antagonist's voice rumbled low across the plaza. "She is mine. She chose me the moment she laughed." James' blood turned cold. Emily's jaw tightened. "Then we take her back, no matter what it costs." James' heart hammered, knowing the truth. Saving the Innocent might mean destroying her. His soul fractured under the weight of that choice, but he whispered, "Better she be free than chained." Daniel reappeared suddenly at the plaza's edge, his silver armor shattered but his eyes burning with conflicted fire. He said quietly, "You can't save her, James. She's already gone." James stepped forward, voice shaking. "She's not gone, Daniel. She's still fighting." Emily's voice cracked. "If you ever cared about us, prove it now. Stand with us." For a long moment, Daniel's face flickered, the old friend James once knew buried beneath layers of corruption. Then he shook his head, a bitter smile twisting across his lips. "No, I've come too far. This is my place now." The antagonist's laughter rumbled approvingly. James' heart sank, grief tearing his chest apart, but he stood taller, fists clenched. "Then you've chosen your side," he whispered. The Innocent's distorted cry echoed, pulling James' eyes back to her. He knew this battle was no longer about Daniel. It was about breaking the chain before it consumed them all. James raised his glowing fists toward the Innocent, his voice breaking. "I won't let you suffer anymore." The antagonist's voice roared, "Then destroy her, and destroy yourself with her." Emily shouted, "James, no!" as he leapt upward, propelled by unstable code, his body burning like a falling star reversed. He reached for the Innocent, her wide eyes shimmering between childlike fear and corrupted void. She whispered faintly, "James," before static drowned her voice. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, her body flickering violently in his embrace. Pain seared through him, every nerve screaming, as if the system itself tried to tear them apart. Emily cried his name, her scream raw with despair. James held on tighter, whispering through clenched teeth, "You're free now." The plaza shook violently, neon ground cracking wide as blinding light burst outward, drowning shadow in a single unstoppable wave. Silence fell as the wave of light subsided, leaving the plaza cracked and empty. James stood trembling, the Innocent limp in his arms, her avatar flickering weakly but free of corruption. She blinked once, eyes wide with relief, whispering faintly, "You found me." James smiled through tears, whispering, "I'll always find you." Emily collapsed beside them, her avatar broken and fading, her voice weary. We did it." The antagonist's voice echoed faintly, "Weak but not gone. You delayed me. But nothing ends here." James' heart clenched, knowing the fight wasn't truly over. Daniel was gone, consumed by shadows, leaving only the scar of betrayal. James looked to the Innocent and Emily, their fragile forms illuminated by the dying neon around them. He whispered, "We are not safe, not yet, but we're together." His words trembled with both victory and grief. A scar burned into his soul. The silence after the storm felt heavier than the chaos itself. James stood in the fractured plaza, the Innocent still in his arms, her body faintly glowing as though her soul had only just been reclaimed. Emily knelt close, her avatar broken but holding on, whispering, "We survived." Yet James couldn't bring himself to answer. The air smelled of static and ash, though no air should exist here, every breath filled with weight. Above them the sky rippled, patches of void flickering where stars should be. James whispered, "It's not over." Emily met his eyes, her expression raw. "Then we prepare for what's next." He looked at the Innocent, her fragile smile trembling, and he wondered if victory was worth the cost. Around them, the avatars of the plaza stood frozen, lifeless mannequins staring with empty eyes. The Metaverse wasn't dead, it was waiting. James lowered the Innocent gently onto the fractured neon ground, her eyes meeting his with fragile trust. "You came for me," she whispered, her voice thin but real. He smiled faintly, though his heart carried the weight of loss, replying, "I never stop." Emily steadied herself, her avatar flickering like a candle flame, and said, "The system will rebuild. It always does. We need to decide if we'll fight again." James stared at the horizon where the antagonist's shadow had vanished, yet the echo of its voice still lingered. He clenched his fists, unsure if courage remained or if despair had already claimed him. The Innocent's small hand reached for his, warm despite the cold glow. That touch grounded him, reminding him of what they fought for: connection, dignity, hope. For the first time, James realized their war wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to surrender. Daniel's voice echoed faintly across the plaza, not from his form but from the system itself, his tone hollow. "You can't escape me, James." James' blood ran cold as he looked around, but Daniel was nowhere, only static lingering in the air. Emily muttered, "He's part of it now." James whispered, "No, he is it." The Innocent shivered, clutching James' sleeve, her voice trembling. "Don't let him take me again." He pulled her closer, determination surging through his grief. "He won't, I swear it." But deep inside, James knew this was a promise made on broken ground. The antagonist had fed on betrayal, and Daniel's surrender had only made it stronger. Shadows rippled along the plaza floor, stretching toward James' feet. Emily stepped beside him, her jaw set. "Then we face it together." James nodded, but a flicker of fear betrayed his eyes. The battle was over, but the war had only transformed. The Metaverse began to rebuild itself around them, walls rising from broken code, avatars flickering back to life with hollow smiles. James felt nausea twist in his gut as one by one, the figures turned their empty eyes on him. Emily hissed, "It's resetting. They'll never stop." James shouted to the sky, voice raw, "Then I'll burn you down every time you rise." The antagonist's whisper answered from nowhere and everywhere. "Every flame leaves ash, and from ash I grow stronger." James' hands glowed faintly again, unstable sparks dancing across his fingers. The Innocent clung to him tighter, her eyes wide with terror and faith. Emily reached for his shoulder, her tone breaking. "Then whatever happens, we don't fight alone." James nodded, heart pounding with rage and fear. If this was only the beginning, he would face it, not as an escapee, but as a warrior. The air trembled as silence fell once more. James removed his headset in the real world, his small apartment dim and silent, yet the glow of the screen burned brighter than it should. He stared at it, his reflection staring back, half human, half avatar, eyes hollow with static. The Innocent's laugh echoed faintly from the speakers, though the system was shut down. James whispered, "I never left," his voice cold and certain as the reflection smirked at him. The screen flickered, words scrawling across in red. Another one logged out. His breath hitched, the headset slipping from his hands, landing on the carpet with a hollow thud. The glow didn't fade. It spread across the walls of his room, lines of code dripping like blood. James froze, unable to move, as the system whispered softly, "Welcome home." His final scream never left his throat.